Tonight, a defiant Iran fires missiles just days before its showdown with the U.S. and other world powers. Who will be the first to blink? I'm Harry Smith. Also tonight, the Trojan bomber. A terrorist barely misses killing a Saudi prince with a new kind of bomb, invisible and undetectable. Fighting extradition, fugitive director Roman Polanski remains jailed in Switzerland. Will he face justice in a U.S. prison? And the lost dog that seemed to really know there was no place like home. Steve Hartman's Assignment America.
Say hi.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie is on assignment. A high-stakes meeting over Iran's nuclear program is 3 days away, and today the Iranians up the ante with a show of force. They test-fired their most advanced missiles capable of hitting Israel as well as U.S. bases in the Middle East. So the stage is set for a showdown. National security correspondent David Martin begins our coverage tonight.
The Iranians were planning the missile tests before President Obama accused them of hiding a nuclear site. So today's shots were not so much an act of defiance as a reminder of the stakes. A missile, which could someday carry a nuclear warhead, flew southeast from its launch site and splashed into the ocean, a distance that could reach Israel and parts of Europe. In case anybody missed the point, Iran's defense minister vowed Israel's days are numbered. For the moment, however, Iran is not a nuclear power, but an oil power, and the U.S. is preparing sanctions that would cut off sales of oil-producing technology.
To really have an impact on Iran, you have to have an impact on its ability to export oil at substantial levels.
Ray Takei of the Council of Foreign Relations says that for sanctions to work, Russia and China have to go along, and China in particular will be reluctant.
Because the Chinese are actually investors in Iran's petroleum sector, and also consumers of Iran petroleum products. So they might have some hesitation in terms of really imposing rigorous sanctions on Iran petroleum sector.
But the White House says the discovery of this secret uranium enrichment plant dug into the side of a mountain has finally awakened everybody to the threat posed by Iran.
There has never been a stronger international consensus to address Iran and its nuclear weapons program than there is right now.
U.S. and European officials will meet with the Iranians on Thursday to hear their explanation for the facility. Takei predicts they will claim they have done nothing wrong.
They're going to make the claim that they were not obligated to declare the site because no nuclear material has been introduced.
Iran already has said it will allow international inspectors to visit the site, much as they have done with their other enrichment plant at Natanz, which they claim will only produce fuel for nuclear energy.
If sanctions don't work, the U.S. or Israel could launch airstrikes to destroy Iran's nuclear plants. But Defense Secretary Gates says that would only set Iran back by 1 to 3 years. So for now, construction at that one secret site continues. Harry?
David Martin at the Pentagon tonight. Thank you. The UN has already slapped a number of sanctions on Iran, including restrictions on the import and export of arms and nuclear technology, travel bans for those who work in the nuclear program, including scientists. Some financial assets have been frozen, and some of Iran's air and sea cargo can be inspected. Juan Zarate is a former deputy national security advisor for combating terrorism and now a national security analyst for CBS News. Juan, good evening.
Good evening, Harry.
These sanctions have not been particularly effective in the past. What would make new ones work?
Well, in the first point, I think the sanctions have been watered down in the past, largely to accommodate China and Russia. I think there are very clear points of leverage, though, if there's political will to enforce these sanctions in the banking sector, in the inspections of cargo and shipments, and in particular with gas imports, upon which Iran relies heavily. And so if there's the political will, there are points of leverage with respect to these sanctions.
The key to this really seems to be Russia and China. You got movement last week from Medvedev saying that some sanctions might be inevitable. Are they on board this time around?
Well, we're certainly seeing very good signals from the Russians, but the key will be the Thursday meeting, the meeting with the Iranians on October 1st, where the Iranians now have the onus to explain themselves to the international community. And that then, I think, will set the table for whether or not sanctions and harsher sanctions will be put in place.
Juan, stay with us for a moment. We want to get your reaction to our next story, which is terrifying. Al-Qaeda has developed a new tactic that allows suicide bombers to breach even the tightest security. Aviation experts are particularly concerned. A warning, the subject matter is graphic. Sheila McVicker has our report.
Inside a Saudi palace, this is the bloody aftermath of an al-Qaeda attack in August aimed at killing Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, head of Saudi Arabia's counterterrorism operations. To get his bomb into this room, Abdullah Asseri, one of Saudi's most wanted men, avoided detection by 2 sets of airport security, including metal detectors, palace security, and spent 30 hours in the close company of the prince's own Secret Service agents, all without anyone suspecting a thing. How did he do it? Taking a trick from the narcotics trade, which has long smuggled drugs and body cavities, Asseri had a pound of high explosives, plus a detonator inserted in his rectum. This operation was meticulously planned, with al-Qaeda once again producing something new, this time the Trojan bomber. The blast left the prince lightly wounded. As an assassination, a failure. As an exercise in defeating security, it was perfect. The bomber had persuaded the prince he wanted to leave al-Qaeda, setting a trap. This is al-Qaeda's own animated movie showing the meeting between the bomber and the prince. Asseri says more senior al-Qaeda figures want to surrender and convinces the prince to talk to them on a cell phone. Listen to the conversation recorded by al-Qaeda. You will hear a beep in the middle of 2 identical phrases that are repeated by the bomber and his handler.
Your vision shall come true, Allah willing. May Allah give you good news. Your vision shall come true, Allah willing.
Explosives experts tell CBS News that beep was likely a text message activating the bomb concealed inside Asseri. The Trojan bomber hands the phone to Prince Mohammed. He's standing next to him, and 14 seconds later, he detonates.
This is the nightmare scenario.
On a plane at altitude, the effects of such a bomb could be catastrophic, and there is no current security system that could stop it.
Absolutely nothing other than to require people to strip naked at the airport.
And al-Qaeda says it will share its new technique via the internet very soon, and there is nothing that can stop that either. Sheila McVicker, CBS News, London.
Joining us again, national security analyst Juan Zarate. Juan, Sheila just said there doesn't seem to be anything. Is there anything at U.S. airports that could prevent this kind of attack right now?
Well, Harry, with any defense against suicide bombers, you have to have a layered defense, and it involves more than just metal detectors. It involves intelligence on the front end, trained personnel to look for suspicious activity, and so it's the full complement of activities that DHS and other authorities engage in that help defend against this. But this is a dangerous innovation if al-Qaeda or other terrorist groups decide to use this technique to try to attack sites.
So what kind of a signal should this send to TSA and to the Department of Homeland Security?
Well, they're going to have to do some lessons learned from this particular incident and have to watch very carefully how the jihadists begin to use this technique. This will mean training personnel to look for this kind of thing, making sure the magnetometers are set for potential metal in people's bodies. But this is dangerous, and folks are going to have to take a close look at this.
Juan Zarate, thanks.
Thank you.
Now to a criminal case that dates back more than 30 years and could now turn into an international tug-of-war. France and Poland urged Switzerland today to let Roman Polanski go free on bail rather than extradite him to the United States, where he faces prison for having sex with an underage girl. The Oscar-winning director, who is now 76, was arrested Saturday in Zurich. Ben Tracy picks up the story.
Roman Polanski has been living and working in Europe since he fled the U.S. in 1978 after being accused of drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl. Back then, he reached a plea deal, admitting to unlawful sex. But fearing the judge would renege on the deal and put him in prison, Polanski fled to France the day before sentencing. He told 60 Minutes what he did to the girl was wrong.
I went through a year of incredible hardship, and I think I paid for it.
After conquering Hollywood in the 60s and 70s with movies such as Rosemary's Baby and Chinatown, Polanski revived his career as a fugitive, shooting films in Europe, including The Pianist, for which he won the Oscar in 2002. Polanski has carefully avoided traveling to countries where he might get arrested, yet Switzerland, where he owns a home, had never been a problem.
It's not clear why authorities here in Los Angeles have been unable to arrest Polanski before now. They say they've tried 6 times over the years. Yet when they learned he was going to be in Zurich this past weekend, they asked the Swiss to help catch him.
We cannot reward people who flee from the law. They have to be brought to justice.
This all comes as a recent HBO documentary alleges misconduct by the judge during sentencing in 1978. Even the prosecutor doesn't blame Polanski for fleeing.
I'm not surprised that he left under those circumstances.
Polanski's victim, who he paid a settlement, is now married with children. She wants the case dismissed.
I've had a long time to get over it, and I wouldn't want to carry hard feelings around with me for my whole life.
But now, after 30 years on the run, this is one story Roman Polanski is no longer directing. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Los Angeles.
America's most celebrated pilot is returning to the cockpit. U.S. Airways announced today Captain Chesley Sullenberger will begin flying again soon. In January, you'll recall, Sully glided an Airbus 320 to a splash landing in the Hudson River here in New York when the engines were knocked out by a flock of geese. All 155 people on board survived. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, going to bat for Chicago, number 44, Barack Obama. The president throws himself into Olympic competition. The Olympic motto is swifter, higher, stronger. Apparently, President Obama is taking that to heart. In a change of plans today, the president decided he will go to Denmark to try to win the 2016 Summer Games for his hometown. More now from Chief White House correspondent Chip Reid.
As president, he's been one of Chicago's biggest boosters, wearing his beloved White Sox gear every chance he gets.
I've called Chicago home for nearly 25 years.
That's why there was so much disappointment in the Windy City when the president recently said he was too busy to make a final pitch for bringing the 2016 Summer Olympics to Chicago.
I would make the case in Copenhagen personally if I weren't so firmly committed to making real the promise of quality, affordable health care.
But today, he changed his mind. He will join the First Lady and Oprah Winfrey to lobby the International Olympic Committee Friday before the final vote. So what changed?
I think the president believes healthcare is in better shape.
But even if that is right and the polls are mixed, what about the brewing crises in Afghanistan and Iran? The White House says he won't lose any work time because being on Air Force One is almost like being in the Oval Office. And he'll be on the ground in Copenhagen for only 4 hours. Is he worried, though, about the risk to his prestige if he puts in his best effort and loses? Top advisors say no.
The entire Olympic and Paralympic spirit is about working hard and trying and not being afraid of failure. If the president was afraid of failure, he probably would have never run for president.
One theory making the rounds in Washington is that this trip is really a victory lap for the president, that he has inside information that if he goes, Chicago will win. The White House says that's absolutely false. He has no idea if he's going to win, but win or lose, they say he couldn't stand sitting on the sidelines. Harry?
Chip Reid at the White House tonight. Thanks. Now to a public safety issue, texting while driving. This week, Arkansas is joining 18 other states in banning it. And in a new CBS New York Times poll out tonight, 90% of Americans told us they agree that texting behind the wheel should be illegal. It's become such a hot topic, the federal government is holding a summit on distracted driving this week. And on tomorrow's CBS Evening News, we'll look at how it could change the rules of the road and the way you drive. Coming up next. Tonight, Car 54, where are you? Check the parking lot at the bank. It might have been repossessed. The recession is forcing government agencies all over America to cut their budgets. In fact, a survey of police departments found 63% were facing cuts this year. So what happens when you call for a police car and find it's been repossessed? Here's national correspondent Dean Reynolds.
Welcome to Cairo, the seat of Alexander County, Illinois. To say it's seen better days is a cruel understatement. The county of 8,000 people is $500,000 in the red, and the recession has made a bad situation worse, as Sheriff David Barkett knows all too well.
God willing, we're going to protect these people, and we're going to continue with what we got. We're used to struggling. We're used to struggling.
Things got so bad this month that the bank repossessed 5 of his 7 cruisers. 4 of them sit in the bank parking lot now, shorn of their emergency lights, antennas, and even their seals.
This is a pretty extreme example of economic hardship.
I'd say it's very extreme when it affects the protection of lives and property.
It gets worse.
In addition to losing his cruisers, the sheriff has lost 3/4 of his staff, most of them deputies, due to budget cuts.
From as many as 20 full and part-timers on the staff, there are now 5. And Barkett patrols in an SUV the governor loaned him, working extra long hours with help from volunteers and Illinois state troopers.
Altogether, it's about a 92, 93-mile round trip. And it's a big area for just 4 or 5 people to cover.
But things look a little brighter today thanks to a couple of Florida counties who heard about Barkett's problems, had older cruisers they didn't need, and are shipping them to their car-needy colleague.
As a sheriff, I know the demands that he faces every day. I just couldn't imagine facing those demands without cars.
Barkett believes other parts of the country should take note.
If the country's economic climate continues like it is currently, I would say it's a definite possibility that they're going to be in the same boat.
Getting the cruisers is a step in the right direction. Now all the sheriff needs is to get his deputies back to drive them. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Cairo, Illinois.
Overseas today, the Philippines is pleading for international help after devastating floods over the weekend. Entire towns were cut off when bridges and roads washed away. At least 140 people were killed in the worst flooding to hit the Philippines in more than 40 years. Still ahead, whose dog is this? A lost dog gathers clues to help solve a mystery. Steve Hartman's Assignment America is next. Our final story tonight begins with a dog suddenly separated from its owners, a dog more than a little determined to get back home. Here's Steve Hartman's Assignment America.
Over the last 20 years, the Love Me Tender Animal Rescue in Central Tennessee has rounded up more than 1,000 abandoned dogs. And although most are timid and untrusting, this one was notably different.
I could just tell right away she was someone's baby. She just didn't act like a stray dog to me.
Kathy Wilkes-Myers found the Rottweiler a few months ago. It was emaciated and drinking water from a drainage ditch along this empty stretch of highway. Kathy says it's typical for people to dump unwanted pets in the middle of nowhere like this. But again, the dog's demeanor convinced her there was more to the story. So she did some detective work, and what she found is a heart-wrenching tale of unending loyalty.
She was hoping her family would come back, but they couldn't. They couldn't come back. It just breaks your heart.
Kathy found the first clues to this mystery right near where she found the dog.
All this broken glass and tail lights, and the ground was all torn up.
And just down from there, a second set of even more intriguing clues.
And it's like these items had been gathered up over the...
Gathered up?
Yes.
By the dog, she assumed.
It's like she was sleeping with them or waiting there with them.
She took this picture with her cell phone and gathered the items. They were mostly random personal things. Toothbrush, comb, razor, a candle that said Michelle. But nothing that would explain anything. Although now, she did have a hunch.
Kathy remembered 2 weeks earlier she'd driven by an accident on the same stretch of highway. She remembered because it was such a horrible crash. A single car had flipped over and landed on the side of the road at just about the same spot where she found the dog.
Based on what she saw that day, Kathy figured there was no way a person could have survived. But what about a dog? So she called the highway patrol.
She gave me the mom's name and the dad's name, and the mom's name is Michelle, and I just said, oh my God, this is their dog.
Thrown from the car, rescue crews never saw her. The dog spent 13 days scavenging for food along the highway, and 13 nights bedding down with whatever she could find that smelled like her lost family.
That's the last spot. She saw her family, and she was going to stay there.
Kathy figured it all out. But fortunately, she got one thing very wrong. Someone did survive the crash.
I didn't think we were going to make it out of it.
In fact, all 5 passengers survived.
I'm lucky to be sitting here with my family.
Somebody's here to see you.
After 2 weeks believing their dog Ella had died, the family of Joe and Michelle Kelly got the most wonderful, slobbery surprise of their lives.
Unfortunately, it was a bittersweet reunion. Because of the accident and the medical expenses, the Kelly family has had to temporarily relocate to a place that doesn't allow dogs, believe it or not. The good news is Kathy has promised to hold on to Ella for as long as the Kellys need to get back on their feet. For more on this story, you can go to our website, cbsnews.com.
Ella's quite a dog.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks, Steve. That's the CBS Evening News. For Katie Couric, I'm Harry Smith. I'll see you in the morning on The Early Show. Good night.
Ella. Ella. Ella.